Chris Morgan. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are a three-time Olympian for Australia for rowing, and you've done very well, including winning a bronze medal. You've been to, or you're a two-by world champion, which I actually didn't, I must admit, didn't realize explicitly was different from being an Olympic champion until the research stage for this. But they are two different things, so that's a double achievement. You also have two uni degrees.
Huh?
Bachelor of Commerce, Bachelor of Computer Science. You're a neurodiverse athlete. You were diagnosed with autism as an adult, and you're an
Yep.
ambassador for neurodiverse sport and a motivational speaker. So, I mean, it's an incredible resume. Is there anything that I've missed in there?
Um, well, the one thing I always like to plug is how diverse our identities are, and we often don't call out the things that some people think are mundane, but they are super important for who we are. So, I'd be calling
Mm,
out that, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a surf lifesaver, am employed in a career I really enjoy. It's important. I think that we should all take stock of how important all the identities we have are.
yeah, 100%. And especially those things outside of work, like our hobbies and our family, arguably define us more than our job a lot of the time. I mean, that's where we're spending a huge amount of our time, and those are also, well, if we're lucky, our job is our passion too, but for some people, unfortunately, it's not the case. So, yeah, you're right. Those things are super important as well. Now, I think this is going to be really interesting, and I was really interested in interviewing you because of the diversity of your background, as you say, all those different things. I think makes you an incredibly unique individual. Um, and I want to come at this from the learning angle. I don't know if that's as deep dive around the learning side of your life has been done in the previous interviews and that sort of thing you've done. But obviously, this is a learning related podcast. But I think this is going to be interesting because we talk about exceptional learning circumstances on this show, but from a very different lens. We talk about learning disorders a lot and talk to researchers and that sort of thing in those spaces. Yours is an exceptional learning circumstance, but on the other end of the equation where you've had really, really high levels of success, probably some difficulty in there as well as anyone encounters. Um, but just a very, very different side of the coin, but still talking about learning throughout that. So I'm really keen for that. And I found in my research a quote. You got a write up done about you by Alex Kerr. And Alex said, I'm going to read directly from the article: hours on the water, hours on the erg, endless repetition. He became obsessed with learning, improving, and pushing his body past its limits. So I'd love to open with that. Can you talk to me about that learning obsession?
Well, yeah, in this case, rowing really. So you mentioned. I'll go back one step. You mentioned about how my learning circumstances were a bit extraordinary. I would more say that one of my favorite phrases is that you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. You know, it
Mhm.
it's about finding the environment that your particular skills and attributes are suited to. And, a lot of us, some of us are lucky enough to find that. A lot of us spend our whole life searching for it, and some never find it. Um,
Mhm.
if you're in an environment that doesn't particularly suit you, it's always going to be a struggle. Now, I was lucky to have found rowing, because rowing is, on the face of it, such a simple and repetitive sport. It's the one movement. You have no interactions with any of the competitors. It's just start to finish. Um, very, very similar to running or any of those sort of things where you've got your own lane. And it's very easy to just turn it into an effort thing. But the more you get into the sport, the deeper you get, the more you need to focus on the nuance. There's so many thousands of tiny little things that add up to make a movement, and being able to continually break those down and rebuild them into something better, it takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of energy, and it's very,
Mm.
very easy to tune out and just do the reps without necessarily the learning loop. And one of the things I
Mm.
really found I excelled at was I could do the same movement. I could sit on the rating the same number of strokes a minute, pulling the same amount of power for an hour without ever taking my focus off the stroke that I was on. And
Mhm.
that allowed me this that allowed me the freedom to play with the movement, to just consider every single repetition of that movement I did its own isolated experiment. You know, what if I just did this a little bit more? What if I just did this stroke? What if I changed this stroke? And continually that would run through my head. I'd just be watching my scores, running an experiment, watch my
Mhm.
scores, run the experiment, and just continually refine that learning loop over and over. Um,
Mhm.
and that would give me a very exacting standard of what I was willing to accept, because I'd just be building this data on myself, stroke after stroke, session after
Mhm.
session, month and year after year.
Mhm.
And I would demand that of myself and of my crewmates as well. That could be, well, that was an ongoing challenge. My desire to see every stroke be the best it could meant that I was putting that same, okay, let's focus on this time. Let's focus on this time. And
Mhm.
I did find that most of my other crewmates couldn't mm, wouldn't handle that same sort of um, frequency or drive to change things.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was it
Okay.
was definitely one of those that I could see I had that little bit of an advantage in how I
Yeah.
could lock in and obsess on the detail.
Yeah. So you're basically, with all of those reps, you're just getting this enormous, enormous data set that you can analyze, but also play with and change things. Do you think
Yeah.
that, you talked about, don't judge the fish trying to climb the tree. Do you think it was just you being a fish in water with that sport that allowed you to uh, go that deep in the learning and be that obsessed with it? Or do you think that you personally just had an advantage? Like was it passion, or was it biology, or was it some sort of external motivator for you? What sort of got you going there more than your teammates?
So I would say it's not an either or. It's definitely an and. So without
Mhm.
without the biology, that the biology is the ticket to the stadium. Without that, you don't get in the door. Now,
Mhm.
yes, you could create the opportunity yourself. There is nothing stopping a recreational athlete training with that obsessive focus for 30 plus hours a week.
Mhm.
But the sad state of affairs is that, or the sad reality, sorry, is that genetics is a big determinant. Um,
Mhm.
Michael Phelps would not have won the number of gold he did if he didn't have the arm proportions he had and the feet size he had. And
Yeah.
similarly, if my heart and lungs had been half the size of what they were, I was never going to the Olympics. So
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
it it's
Yeah.
a bit sad that you do have to be fatalistic somewhat in genes
Mm.
need to be in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But there is there are plenty of people on this planet with the genes to do amazing things who never go on to do.
Yeah.
And there are plenty more who exhibit early success and then don't take it don't take it any further, either via um, desire they find something else, or via they just don't know how.
Yeah.
Often early success can be a killer because they lose sight of the fact that you need to be challenging yourself and getting better every day. And I think
Yeah.
that again, the perfect storm of circumstances for me, I actually when I was little, my trophy cabinet wasn't first place from running races, first place from this. It was all participation ribbons and thanks for coming.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I played a lot of sports as a kid. That was really good in that the variety gave me a whole lot of experience in learning how to learn, going through that beginner and journeyman phase continually. It really it it sharpened um, my sort of insight for how to pick up something new.
Mm.
But never having been the person that was standing on the top step all the time, it really gave me the desire for, well, got to try and do this a bit better. I did
Yeah.
have some limited success, making school teams, sometimes making a state team here or there. As in like represent the school at the state carnival. I took race walking a little bit further. I managed to get at least one ticket to a national event. That
Okay.
was age group, and yeah, it was.
Yeah.
There was not an early sign that I was going to be a massive elite level athlete. So
Yeah.
I I had the luck of finding as an adult my genetically suited sport because
Mhm.
I'm big, I'm tall, I'm heavy. I wasn't a fast twitch athlete, which takes things like football or sprinting or things like that off the table. Um, you
Mm.
know, I'm big and I'm endurance, which
Yeah.
kind of limits it down. And I happen to
Yeah.
come across this now. My my learning loop really was driven by just building on all those stages up. So
Mm.
the compound experience of everything I experienced when I was a kid growing up, learning how to learn, that gave me that passion for going, well, let's see where this one goes.
Yeah.
And the I guess the double-edged belief, but the belief that, well, I'm in this for fun. I'm not in this to, go out and be a world champion.
Mm.
I never started rowing thinking I was going to be some elite success story. I started it thinking, this is a great challenge. It feels like I've got a bit of a
Mm.
natural knack for this. I wonder what I could
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
And yeah, again, the desire then comes off of that of, well, I'm good at learning how to jump into something new. Let's go. Let's see where this goes.
Mm. Yeah, and your thing was, you mentioned the early athletic career. It sounds like you were always athletic, but it was only once you became an adult that you became an athlete per se in terms of, going to the Olympics professionally, etc. Do you think if you had found rowing as a kid that you would have ended up in the Olympics and just been even better than you were? Or would it maybe, I mean, obviously it's hard to say, but could it have panned out differently and maybe just never become what it did because the timing was wrong?
Yeah, the old sliding doors moment of what if. I
Mm.
know that also in my favour was I came into rowing in South Australia right as there was a little bit of a vacuum in the heavyweight male phase as well. So
Mhm.
that was a thing. I came in via a talent ID. Um, the I did go to a school that had rowing and I never did it. So, the sliding doors moment is a bit more legitimate of,
Yeah.
well, what would have happened
Yeah.
if I? But one of the things I also am very conscious of is that I got some international like, top level coaching very, very early in my
Mm.
career. If I'd
Mhm.
spent 4 or 5 years learning certain habits at a school level that may have been counterproductive to me later.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I know a lot of the research bears out that kids exposed to a larger variety of sport tend to go on and be more successful in general.
Mhm.
I definitely feel like I resonate with that because
Mm.
learning rowing a little bit later, learning rowing from the best in the system very early on, I think really
Yeah.
did set me up well.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you think, I mean, you've talked about a few different variables there. Um, there are the genetics, there's the passion, there's discipline, there's maybe a bit of luck, you know. Are you lucky to get a great coach versus not? Are you lucky to not get injured, etcetera? But in terms of that learning ability or learning mindset, do you think that all Olympians just have a different attitude or different mindset or capacity for learning? Or do you think it's the same as everyone else and it's more of those other things that make the difference?
Well, the first thing I'd say is jumping back to the luck comment. I really am a believer in um, the idea of everyone will have a certain number of opportunities come by them, and
Mhm.
being lucky or having that luck factor is as much about putting yourself out there and maximizing that surface area for the right opportunity to stick. Um, that is a factor. As for whether all Olympians are the same in their learning, even amongst the Olympians, I would definitely say no. I would definitely say
Okay.
that, 80, the 80% genetics to get you into the stadium is something. But then
Mm.
once you're all in there, like the difference between the first and last can still be pretty massive. I know there
Yeah.
are people who, even amongst the crowd at the level that I got to, it came more naturally to them. I know there are others who they got there purely on grit and determination. There are others who
Mm.
got there via well, no, I have to be the best technically at this craft out of anyone. Like there's
Mhm.
so many different ways to high performance, and
Yeah.
it would be it's almost unheard of for it to be the number one genetic freak, also has the number one learning ability, also has the number
Mhm.
one work ethic, also has.
Mhm.
If you're in that sort of stratosphere, you're going to be one of the, I did a sport and was never beaten and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely a difference in learning even amongst
Mm.
Olympians.
Mm.
As for whether that's different to what everyone else does, honestly, I don't think so. Like, we're using Olympics, but what's the difference between an Olympic and a non-Olympic sport? What's the difference between an an Olympic sport and, running a business or, giving a certain keynote speech at the UN or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
Any example
Yeah.
where it is high performance. There is have to step up at this particular event.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the learning is very, very applicable across those domains.
Mm. Yeah. A high level of achievement in any area requires a willingness and drive to continually learn, to get
Mm,
better all the time. And people talk about that. I've heard a number of different successful people in different domains when they're interviewed sort of talk about like, what's the one thing that made the difference for you, or what do you think sets you apart from other people? And a number of them will say that they're like, I just love learning. I just love learning stuff about everything,
mm.
all sorts of different things. And I mean, you don't know necessarily when you're going to need it. A lot of it you don't need, but just having that big data set there of knowledge surely helps. But when it comes to
And
sport, I mean, there's obviously, you know, such a massive element, physical element. Can you talk to us about the learning with the body versus learning with the mind in rowing at the Olympics? How do those two things balance out against each other, and what do they look like?
so the interesting thing about sport is it's the old system one, system two work around everything we do at a top level happens so fast it can't be conscious thought. You can have conscious thought as to
Mhm.
strategies, tactics, etc. But when you're on the field, when you're out in the water, it really does have to be you've done it so much it's automatic. It's like driving a car. Now,
Mm.
that I'd say is the one big difference between, say, doing something new in the scientific world and doing something
Mhm.
new in the sporting world is
Mhm.
both of them, like one of the good unique things about sport is it gives you so many opportunities for doing something that hasn't been done before. So,
Mhm.
you're world champion, where to next? Or, you set a world record, where to next?
Mm.
You are by definition the pinnacle on the planet. And
Yeah.
therefore, in theory, no one can teach you how to do it better, but you still need to
Mm.
learn how to do it better. So it moves
Mhm.
from rote learning to exploratory learning.
Mhm.
Um, it gives you a whole different approach. But the thing about doing that sort of exploratory learning in, say, the scientific world, where someone's on their way to make a breakthrough and whatever it might be, you need to produce that outcome once. You need to make the breakthrough, publish a paper, and you're
Mm.
done. Whereas when you see it in a sporting context, it needs to be you see that glimpse of it, and then you've got to work out that the replication. How do I take this glimpse of something I've seen once and distill it down and do it enough so that it's not something I know cognitively, it's something that I know physically. And
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone who shortcuts that and just comes in and goes, "Oh yeah, my body did it completely all on its own."
Yeah.
There are some, you will make adjustments. You see under load, sometimes you will find more efficient ways to do things as a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still some kind of conscious thought happening there. There's a perception of something that you adjust to. And it may be
Mhm.
small, but it's still there and it's still pushing that conscious thought down into just autonomic action.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it has to start the learning has to start explicit. It's conscious. It's very conscious. You're thinking
Mm,
about it a lot when you learn something new, and then eventually it becomes subconscious. And it sounds like you need that. I mean, there's this author called Julian Jaynes who has this book on consciousness, and in it he talks about he does talk about athletes, and he says athletes actually want in the sporting moment for it to be unconscious. In fact, if you thought about it, it would make it worse. You'd suddenly be
oh,
like, "Oh,
100%.
how do I hold the oar? And like,
Mm,
how do I breathe? I forgot how to breathe." You don't want you just want to be doing it. But I'm imagining that exploratory phase for you is the conscious part. The learning in the background is conscious. You have to think about it. You're like, "What if I try this? What if I try this?" And then you do it enough so that on game day it's unconscious. Is that
mm.
an
You
accurate
you
take?
never you never learn through the race. You learn in
Mm.
training leading up to it, or you
Mhm.
learn in the debrief afterwards when it's gone right or wrong.
Mm.
But
Mm.
when you're in the moment, all you can rely on is I do the thing that I express my body in the best way I know how for the duration of this race, and then I take the input at the end of that and say where to from here.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
while you're in the throes of the race, it is. I've seen a lot of races be stuffed up by, okay, that was a good race, but next race I need to think about A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and they go into the race and they think about three or four things instead of one, and
Yeah.
everything goes out the window.
Yeah. Absolutely. And at that higher level of performance, you're sort of talking about, once you set a world record. And am I correct? You had set a world record in your time. Is that correct?
Yes, although technically in rowing, it's a world's best time because
Okay.
rowing into a massive headwind is different to rowing in a, warm water to what rowing in cold water to,
Sure.
what all the conditions on the day make such a huge difference in
Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, we call it a world's best time, but yes.
Okay. So you've reached that level where you, as you say, you are at the pinnacle. No one should be able to tell you how to do it better. But as you say, you want to do it better. You do want to figure that out, either to beat yourself or to beat everyone else who's coming for you. So who teaches you that? Do you teach yourself that? Does the coach teach you that? Like, how do you go get that next 1% or whatever it is?
So I would say nothing changes with the who aspect. It's still they're still learning with the athlete. There's still direction by the coach. There's still all the same support people around. But instead of it being my brain is saying didactic. Instead of it being explicitly given instruction, it becomes a
Mhm,
lot more, you know, shall we try this? Or I observed this, therefore maybe we try that. Or,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
you wait for an aberration and you go, that was a good one. Let's do more of
mhm.
that.
Okay.
You continue to gain exposure at that edge and just look to sense and respond your way through.
When you're trying to learn at that higher level, but also that nuanced level where the difference in performance might be a second or two over a 5-minute race or something. Is there a degree to which you learn things accidentally? I mean, you use the word aberration there. Is it sort of like the important thing is more just do heaps and heaps of reps so you have that big data set and randomly you're like, oh, I didn't actually think about that, but that worked better than previously. Is some of it random chance or is it all purposefully like, oh, I was deliberately experimenting. I didn't fully know what the experiment would yield, but I intentionally did it and then checked it.
So this is another, it's not either or. In this
Hmm.
case, it's you can engineer an experiment and see the result. You
Mm,
could have time at bat, so to speak, just number of reps and wait for one that was better. But the
hmm.
key point of both of those is it's not sufficient to just go through the reps. So
Hmm.
this is the comment before about some will get there via tenacity and working hard, and
Mm,
that can get you really fit. But if
hmm.
you're just doing the work, a lot of the learning opportunities will slip by. It's about having the attention, the focus, the desire to look for that
Mm,
result in amongst the data, because it's
hmm.
very easy to generate 20, 30,000 reps a day and go, oh yeah, I did them all. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
what did you feel on this one? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
to be continually looking for that, and also
Hmm.
to be continually trying to develop the kinesthetic feedback, or to have the right instrumentation on you so that you can get that signal. Like, that's an
Hmm.
important part of that learning loop. Without that feedback signal, you can get all the lucky aberrations. You can devise all the experiments, and it means nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the learning has to be intentional, both in terms of actively doing it, but also in the setup. Like you need to make sure you're getting the right data and then analyzing it and having all the right tools and the people to do that, basically.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm,
and that's
okay.
and that's the interesting thing. Like, we think about often a coach as a person who is the one you turn to for answers. But when you get to a certain level, by definition, your coach probably hasn't been there. Like,
Yeah.
who can teach Usain Bolt to run faster by having had run faster? That
Yeah.
by definition, there couldn't have been anyone.
Hmm.
Um, Coaches in this regard are super vital, not for being that person that gives the answer, but by being that person that sets up the environment to find the answer.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. That's a very good point. And it's interesting you mention that because while I'm not an expert in the teaching, teaching pedagogy in terms of the world of actual teachers in schools, but I am aware that that is two of the schools of thought is like, is the teacher's role to facilitate an environment and a culture where students learn on their own, or are they to be the expert that teaches the kids the things and doesn't really matter what else? And like all things, is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it biology? Is it passion? It's probably always both and.
Hmm.
Um, so that makes a lot of sense, though, especially the higher you go, the fewer and fewer people have the knowledge or the experience to comment.
The missing link then is once you get that information across, how do you embed it? Because I
Yeah.
definitely know in my life there's been millions of things I've learned that maybe I learnt them one day and maybe they stuck for a day or two and then they
Mm.
disappear. And
Mhm.
even when I think about my rowing, it would be I always like the analogy making a change is like circling the drain. And,
Mhm.
you might think about something over here and then you go over time, it goes too far and you have to start thinking about something over here. And then you realize, oh, but wait a minute, that first change, and you cycle between the change and just gradually refining it each time you revisit the
Mhm.
concept. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
without that mentality, it's far too easy to, okay, I've learned something and then I drift off over here and then I never revisit the concept. And
Mhm.
you often need someone just continually pulling you back to the things that you already know, but
Mm.
pulling you back into them with fresh eyes, pulling you back
Mhm.
into them with a little bit more experience to look at it slightly differently.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
And
that
that's
makes a
where I
lot of
think that
sense.
sort of explicit, you know, here's what you need to know, just sent down as an edict from above, probably isn't ideal. You
Yeah.
need that go around, that embodiment of what that learning was, and
Yeah.
repeatedly revisiting.
Yeah. Yeah. But it probably also depends on what stage in the learning journey you're at. Because if
Mm.
you're week one rowing school and the coach is like, You'll figure it out," you're going to be like, no, I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Eh,
I just want you to tell me exactly what to do.
yeah, and I've actually seen both in school rowing programs. It's the,
Oh, really?
well, we will give you the, this is the oar, and the oar comes in, and then it comes out of the
Hmm.
water and it goes back in. All right,
Hmm.
there you go. Off you go. And they
Yeah.
go out and they wobble about and they fall in a few times and they get, and
Hmm.
just gradually, in the same way that, kids learn to climb a tree. No one teaches them the fine art of
Hmm.
climbing. They just fall out of the tree a few times and off they
Hmm.
go. Um,
Yeah.
would it be faster with, explicit step by step, etc.?
Mm.
Maybe. Is it more
Mm.
effective? I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I wouldn't say that either path is off limits just in and of itself. Again, another case of it shouldn't be either or, because there are definitely, um, like one of the things I always used to find is there's a difference between being able to know the concept and being able to get it through to someone else. I've worked
Mm.
with so many great coaches over the years where the athlete that was in the boat with me would stall in their progression. And often it would just take saying the same thing in 100 different ways. And on the 100th
Hmm.
time, the analogy finally drops and the knowledge is
Mm.
transferred. All right. So
Yeah.
it can be down to an individual basis. Is it the
Yeah.
time? Is it the words we use? Is it uh, the coach or the teacher finally has the understanding of the athlete in question and their background and their experience, or just the exposure and the luck of trying all the different ways of explaining something? That was actually
Yeah.
something I found personally to be a strength of mine, is that ability to come up with a new connection or a new way of explaining something to help
Mhm.
convey what the coach is trying to get to the crew. Um,
Mhm.
Again, I don't know whether that's a property of me or a property of me being neurodivergent. Hard to separate one from the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely a talent I found over the years. Is just it's not enough to know the concept.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, talk to us about that more. I mean, if anyone were to Google you, they would see you speak very positively about autism and neurodivergence in your own career. There's one quote I think was literally, "Autism made me successful," or something like
Hmm.
that.
I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish in this, nor do I want to diminish that for a lot of people. No, it's not. Yeah, I think we're in danger if we only look at the positives or the negatives.
Mhm.
For a lot of people, it's not a net positive in their life.
Mm.
But again, I would step back and I would say it made me successful in the environment where I was a fish in the ocean. I
Mhm.
would also say, finishing off that topic for myself, it has definitely been in other environments, me being a fish trying to climb a tree. It has
Mhm.
definitely been a detraction for me in terms of friendships or making friends when I was growing up, and
Mm.
understandings of social interactions. I'm sure it cost me in other team sports or social activities or job interviews, etc. It's
Mhm.
and just everyday interactions of even how people have perceived me versus what I'd intended.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's being different will always have its advantages and disadvantages for whatever
Mhm.
ever definition of different you give, whether that's being a foot taller than everyone else on the planet,
Yeah.
or whether it's being neurodivergent, or whether it's being like whatever is your uniqueness.
Yeah.
It's if you can find the environment that really rewards that difference,
Mhm.
that's where you're made to be, and that's where, in my case, in rowing, autism did make me successful because it
Yeah.
it gave me that environment where you're talking about analyzing video footage of the crew rowing, and one frame of video is the difference between good and bad, or
Yeah.
the ability to sit there and do the same thing for 2 hours with just a complete block out of the rest of the
Yeah.
world, or
Yeah.
it really did fit how I would naturally approach it.
I think that's a good way of framing it. Every strength comes with its weakness on the other side. Like somewhere out there, like you say, being 7 foot tall is amazing if you're doing sport or, dating or you want to be a model or something like that. But it's probably really annoying when you try to walk through a door or get in a car and, but people don't
Oh,
always talk
geez.
about that. So,
Sit
yeah.
sit on sit on the international flights of the rowing team.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
one of the short ones, and all my compatriots were all in the exit row seats, and then you got the others that are like knees up
Yeah.
around the chin for 12 hours because you don't fit in the seats as they are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's society is made for the average person, and
Mm.
show me the average person. Economics, the market is the rational person. Show me the rational
Mm.
person. In
Yeah.
these, you know, no one fits those molds perfectly, and it's about
Yeah.
finding, well, where are your unique little gifts that you can bring,
Yeah.
and how do you find that environment?
I was gonna say, I really like that because on a different, side of the same coin, at the clinic here, about roughly half the kids we see are ASD and or ADHD. But, as allied health clinicians, a lot of what we're doing for those students, aside from helping with their educational stuff with learning will be the social side of things. And the way that we do this reframe with them where in social situations, they come in and they're like, well, I'm really, really interested in medieval warfare or like 1800s trains or something like that. And that's what I want to talk about and do. How do I make sure I don't talk about that when I'm around other people and talk about what they like? And it's
Mm,
sort of like, well, you're kind of coming in with the wrong question. What about we just spend our efforts finding all the people that really love medieval warfare and 1800s trains and then just talk to them about that the whole time? So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
when you're talking about being the fish in water, like finding the thing that you're good at. Yeah, there's always going to be moments where you don't fit on the plane seat or whatever, but also there's going to be times where you're like, yeah, but I'm really, really good at this thing, or I really, really enjoy this thing, and other
Mm.
people can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, how often does a job managing a medieval fair come around? Position yourself
Yeah.
to be that person or
Yeah,
whatever it might be.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think back
exactly.
to my academic learning, and it was really one of those. I was always interested in the connection or what underpinned an idea, and the second you started trying to trying to get me to rote learn something, it just bored me spitless.
Mm, yeah,
So I would be the classic. I remember in high school a number of times I was being, moved out of class or, being told I was being disruptive because they would start down I think better word, it wasn't a lecture, lesson in high school.
yeah,
And after a while I'd see the pattern. I'm like, right, got the pattern, write a couple of
yeah,
sentences, and
yeah,
I would then switch off and I'd just
yeah,
start talking to friends or anything else because I just couldn't bring myself to be absorbed in it once I saw the patterns and went, I get the concept now. And I
yeah,
think it really, we need to do a lot better in the educational systems at it not being one size fits all.
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
if you don't have engagement, you're not going to get the effective outcomes.
absolutely. And if you can't engage with the work or you've finished engaging, like the work is too hard or it's too easy,
Mm,
then of course you're going to disengage. And then that's when it does look like, behavioral issues or naughtiness or, the person's unmotivated and that sort of thing. And we see that heaps where parents will come in and say, oh, my kid keeps getting in trouble at school, blah, blah, blah. Being on the clinical side of things, the answer is usually the work is too hard, but sometimes it is for some of our kids. They are very bright, but they do get stigmatized because they've got ASD or ADHD as being a behavioral kid or a disengaged kid or something like that. And sometimes it is exactly as you're saying. It's like they already learnt it. It's literally, why would I continue to pay attention to you talking about the same thing if I've already learnt the thing? There's no point.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I consider myself very lucky that, in primary school I went to, I would have some teachers some years that were good enough to say, okay, well, we can see you've learned this bit. We can see that, you need something else. And they would give me something off to the
Hmm.
side that was a bit more challenging or just something that would interest me a bit more.
Yeah.
Whether that was, throwing a high school maths book at me when I was in year 4 or things like that. Like it was just something to something to re-engage when you're finding again that you're not the monkey at the tree, you're the fish. You need
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Which is harder, doing a uni degree or training for the Olympics?
Um, well, that's a good question because the uni degree has a a good enough. Like you can get 100% in your exams, right? You can
Mhm.
learn the material as far as you need to, And
Yeah.
part of that, like going beyond that, if you call, the whole world of what could open up in PhD, et cetera, well, then yeah, sure, they're equal. But if you're saying getting the degree is
Mm.
far easier only because it's a finite journey.
Yeah.
There's a bar that you can clear and go, right, got this, I'm there.
Yeah.
Whereas the one thing that I to this day love about sport is by definition, it can never be done.
Mhm.
There is no
Mhm.
point I will ever get to, even if I was still full-time rowing, I could never ever get to a point where I say, I have learnt rowing. There is
Yeah.
always, always more nuance you can teach your body.
Yeah.
And, I do remember listening to a podcast with, I'm going to blank on the name, a Norwegian triathlete coach who was saying he
Mhm.
was running Christian Blumenfeld through swim training and
Mhm.
measuring him versus some Olympic swimmers. And,
Mhm.
this guy is the biggest physical engine on the planet.
Yeah.
He can swim at the same speed as the Olympic swimmers, but they
Mm.
noted that the swimmers would use something ridiculous like 20% less effort to go the same speed because they've
Yeah.
just spent so much longer honing their craft, like passing those lessons into the body to do things with that little bit more efficiency. And,
Yeah.
there are multiple paths to the end. If you're that much of a genetic freak that you can just get by on power, great,
Yeah.
cool, do it.
Yeah.
Um, Especially in triathlon where he has to do it in 3 different disciplines. But,
Gotta do everything,
um,
yeah.
it's you can never be done studying the art form of your sport.
Mm.
And, it's
Mm.
similar, you could take it into the academics, there is always something else to discover in a field.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but too often we box it up to that discrete achievement. And I think we're guilty of the same thing in sport. Like this is sort of off the cuff coming to me now in that, we put the journey in sport a lot of the time down to have I won this or that race? Have I got a,
Mm.
world champ gold or an Olympic gold or something? And we chase
Yeah.
a discrete achievement.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the satisfaction in the learning is that ongoing journey, is that feeling of I'm doing something that will never be done. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be because
Yeah.
the fun is in the journey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where I think we could do with a lot more focus is the focus that your journey doesn't need to complete.
Mhm. Mm. Do you think that's something that's the same then between your uni studies versus your athletic career is sort of just realizing that you need to you will always be learning and you need to just continue to learn and that's just such a big part of it?
I I think that is definitely true. I think that in some ways we do ourselves a disservice with the university system in that way. Like you need almost to go out into the workforce and get slapped in the face by the difference between a fresh graduate and someone who's been in the
Yeah,
field for 20 years to then realize,
definitely.
oh, wait, there's a whole bunch of learning here beyond the university degree.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah. Like most
and
of it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we frame these things as the big achievements at the time. And
Mm.
like I think sports just good in that there's a lot more seamless sort of, club to state to national to region to like there's always the next stage
Yeah.
outlined in front of you right till you're at the pointy end. Um,
Yeah.
when you hit that pointy end, it still would be nice if, again, we could frame that this should be a never-ending journey because,
Yeah.
like we were chatting about before the recording, Michael Phelps and the like, reaching the pinnacle of achievement and then saying, now what? Like
Yeah.
we as a society need to do a lot better there in
Mm.
de-emphasizing the achievement of achievement as opposed to the achievement of the process and the journey.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, to wrap up here, could you maybe just leave us with any final thoughts you have? You know, at the intersection of all these different things for you, do you have advice for people who are neurodivergent and they're pursuing, you know, a sports career, or they're in school, or they want to go to uni and they want to achieve big things, they want to keep that journey going? Is there anything that you would say to those people?
I would say don't hold on too tight to the one idea of what your success is going to be.
Hmm.
Enjoy the journey, get the most out of it that you can, make yourself the better version of yourself every day. Keep trying to learn, and keep in mind all your different facets. Even if one thing doesn't work out, or even if you are on a track that is working out, keep an eye out for when things look interesting and, when a side quest could turn into the main campaign. I was going through
Mm,
uni on track to be, going into PhD programs and a life of academia. And rowing
mm,
came in halfway through my uni career. And it, it got to a point where I had to choose between dreams because I couldn't effectively chase both of them as much as I'd want. Now,
mhm.
if I'd just been so pigeonholed saying, "Oh, I'm going into academia," the opportunity would have passed me right by. Like,
Yeah.
everyone should be looking to chase the opportunity that excites them most every day, because at some point this journey will end. The journey we're all on has to end at some point, and you want to be able to look back and say it was a life filled with experiences of chasing journeys that were meaningful and exciting. Everyone is going to get those opportunities. You just need to look closer for them sometimes. Find that ocean to be, find that ocean for your fish. Don't look at the
Yeah.
trees.
Yeah. Love it. Couldn't have asked for better words to finish on, Chris. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And look forward to talking to you more soon.
Sounds good. Cheers. Thanks for having me.